my athletes get sick of hearing this from me, but I say it all the time. We live in a both and world, okay? And there's a lot of both and. We want to be good at academics and athletics. We want to work hard and we want to have fun. But the other thing that we talk about all the time is this combination of confidence and humility. And confidence without humility is arrogance. And that's just not a world I want to live in. But humility without confidence is insecurity. And insecurity, people can sniff that out right away.
Welcome to Inside the Headset, presented by CoachComm. Each episode pulls back the curtain on the coaching profession, spotlighting voices from every level of the game and offering lessons and insights for your own path. But first, a word from CoachComm.
When the game's on the line, your play call can mean the difference between winning and losing. Don't let poor communication cost you the game. For 35 years, CoachComm has been the trusted leader in coaching communication, delivering solutions with unmatched sound quality, performance, and durability. That's why thousands of coaches in high schools across the country trust CoachComm. You put in the hours to prepare. Make sure your communication delivers when it counts. CoachComm, giving coaches the ultimate competitive edge. Visit CoachComm.com to learn more.
Follow Inside the Headset on your favorite podcast platform and subscribe to our YouTube channel for exclusive content. Now, let's get inside the headset.
Coach Jones, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well.
Well, I'm excited about having you on here, Coach. And if you've listened to the podcast before, you should know how we start this thing. Every time we get rolling, the first question we always ask is, what was that moment that you had in your life where you kind of knew this is what you wanted to do, being a part of this great profession?
Well, it started when I was in high school. My dad was a high school football coach. He had gone to become an administrator by the time I got into high school. But I had football in my blood through my dad being a football coach. And my brother was a high school football coach. But when I was in high school, actually my start kind of got in basketball because I was a terrible basketball player. And we had summer basketball leagues, and my head basketball coach said, "Hey, we all have roles to play. You're not going to be your role on the basketball court. It's not actually going to be on the court." And at that time, high school coaches could not coach the players in the summer league basketball. And so he asked me to take over as kind of the leader of the summer league basketball. Really enjoyed it. I thought my peers, even though they knew I wasn't a great basketball player, respected what I was doing as a coach. And that was kind of where I thought, hey, maybe I can create an environment where I could have influence on people's lives.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. So obviously that big C on your chest, Central College, it's obviously a special place for you from a collegiate standpoint. Yeah. Played there, spent all your collegiate career there. You know, playing there from 83 to 86, you knew you wanted to coach. Kind of how did you get started? Because I know you started off in the high school ranks. How did you get that first gig, kind of kick through that door and begin your coaching career?
Yeah. Actually, when I was in college, I played at Central. I played all 4 years. But during the off season, we had enough time at that time I was a junior high basketball coach while I was playing football.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I did that, and then my last 2 years of college, I was a high school girls track coach.
Okay.
So we didn't have spring football back in those days. Division III didn't have spring football.
Yeah.
Strength and conditioning, we could work around my coaching responsibilities. So my first varsity coaching football position I received was after I graduated from college, and they saw that I played college football, but they also saw that I had coaching experience. And so they told me that's the reason why they hired me, was I had the dual football coaching or football playing background along with the coaching of other sports.
So prior to getting into the high school football, let's talk about those two jobs you had as a youngster. You had the opportunity to coach, and I'm going to put the emphasis on junior high. A very young group of people that at that point, some of them can't dribble yet, some of them don't quite understand how to shoot a free throw, don't understand the basic rules of the game. When you start talking about just coaching that age, not necessarily your sport, what were some of the things that you learned as a young coach?
we had a great junior high basketball coach by the name of Carl Korver, and Korver is kind of a legendary name in color. He had a nephew that went on and played in the NBA for, I don't know, 19 years or whatever.
Yeah.
And so he was a great mentor, and it was all about relationships and developing people. And then I had a middle school principal that I worked with, and he would say, in reference to teaching, he goes, "What do you teach?" And I said, "Well, I'm a history teacher." And he said, "No, you teach students." He said, "History is just a conduit to you connecting with the students." Mm-hmm. And I took that same mindset with, I am coaching players. Basketball is just my avenue to influence them.
Yeah.
And that was kind of my approach, is I was going to use sport as an avenue to try to make impact on young people's lives. And so that was meaningful. I was the head C-League coach, which means I had those people that couldn't walk and chew gum at the same time.
Right.
We celebrated every free throw we made, which was about once every 2 or 3 games.
There you go. So, I mean, that's awesome. I mean, because clearly you got a huge nugget that probably, I would only imagine, still applies to you today, using football kind of as just that tool to elevate these young men. And then ask you about the other job that you had. You said you were a varsity girls track coach. Any interesting, tidbits that you kind of learned that helped maybe guide you through your career in football?
Well, I coached the shot put and discus throwers.
Okay.
And I still see them around town. They're 57-year-old women that will see me in the supermarket and say, "Coach Jones, how you doing?" And they'll still tell me that they were mad that they had to run sprints in practice because even though they were throwers, we still worked on explosion and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But again, it was relationships and connecting with them and trying to get to know them more than just the fact that they were, competing for me. My dad was a football coach, and he would say, if those athletes think that you really care about them, they'll run through a wall for you. You can really treat them. You can be tough on them if they think they really care about them. And then he would say, the secret is, and then he'd do a dramatic pause, and then he would say, the secret is you got to really care about them.
Yeah.
And so with that, developing relationships, connecting with them, finding out more about who they are. Some of my track athletes struggled academically, and so we developed game plans and how to help them out academically. And so it was fun, and it's still fun to this day seeing them as some of them are grandmothers.
Right. Yeah, that's awesome. And, I think what's really cool is, by the time you're done with your undergrad, getting your actual undergrad degree, you have probably figured out a lot of stuff that, is not just important for coaching middle school, but just coaching in general, just being able to have that sound advice from your dad, being able to have experience with the young ladies on the track team, being able to have that experience with the C team, as you call them. You're probably more equipped than you ever knew for the profession, for the long haul, just with some of the tidbits you're able to learn there. Now, you get the opportunity to coach. Now you're in football, and I would assume you're starting to feel comfortable in the places you know a little bit more about and all that good stuff.
I definitely have more expertise with football than I do.
Right.
Basketball. They could have sued me for malpractice on what I actually taught them about basketball.
And so, what were those first couple of years like in regards to like, hey, when I'm coaching ball, this is much different than my playing experience. Or it was much different than me playing ball.
So we had 120 guys out for football at Central, and we had I played for Ron Skipper, who was the president of the American Football Coaches Association at one time. I was lucky enough to play in some really good college football teams. Then my first coaching job down in Missouri, I was a junior high football coach. I had 13 people out for football. I went from having 120 guys I played with to 13 people out, and 2 of them were girls.
Yeah.
And we had such a wide variety because 2 of the guys, by the time they graduated high school, ended up playing Division I football. One of them had a cup of coffee in the NFL. So I had 13 kids out, 2 of them were girls, these guys that ended up playing Division I, they were amazing junior high athletes.
Yeah.
So my first coaching job, we taught every player every position. Everybody learned how to take a snap. Everybody learned how to throw a out pattern. Everybody learned how to drive block. Everybody learned how to take a handoff. And it was so much fun. And believe it or not, we were actually okay because we had those two dudes that in junior high football, you have two dudes that could run the football.
Yeah, you're good.
They had a hard time tackling them.
Yeah.
And so that was really, really good learning experience for me to learn how to empathize with my players. I had to learn a lot of patience. And I also got great support from the community. They really valued it. The second year, they moved me up to be the defensive coordinator, and I was the defensive coordinator for the whole school district. And so we combined the junior high football teams together. So now the two junior highs merged together. Now we had a 7th grade team, 8th grade team, we had a freshman team, I had a JV team, a varsity team, and I was on the sidelines of every one of those games calling the defenses. And that was a great experience. You learn so much about game management. You learn about development because you weren't teaching the same thing as 7th graders that you were teaching the varsity.
Yeah.
You about work ethic. It was just a great experience. And so I did that. So I was in Missouri for 2 years. And then, that led me to move back to Pella, Iowa, where Central College is located. And I coached high school football for 4 years when I was at Pella.
Yeah. I mean, what just to echo what you said, what a tremendous experience to be able to like look at football through that lens, especially when you sit at the collegiate level as you have for so many years and you see these freshmen walk in and you know that they can't quite understand the same lingo and understand how fast you're talking to that senior offensive lineman versus that guy that just showed up, and having that experience early on probably helped you be able to, handle that guy that's the incoming freshman versus the guy that's the 5th year senior. And, you mentioned you take that opportunity over to Pella High School. What role were you in there? And, what inspired you for the switch to get over there?
Yeah, I was the offensive line coach at Pella High, and I was the play caller. I wouldn't say I was the coordinator because it's really the head coach's offense that he allowed me to call the plays for at least the last 2 years. So I was there at 4 years, and the last 2 years I was the offensive line coach and the play caller. And Pella is really blessed with really good athletes. He's really well supported by the community. And I was lucky enough the last 3 years, we didn't lose a regular season game because of the athletic talent that we had at Pella High.
Yeah. Now, after, this actually long career, if you count those days as an undergrad of, middle school ball, girls track and defensive coordinating and middle school football and then high school offensive side of the ball with a little play calling on either side of the ball, you make the decision to leap into the collegiate level, return into your alma mater. What inspired the change to, want to do it at the collegiate level, and how did you kind of kick your foot through that door to get started?
Well, there's twofold. One, I went and got a master's degree in counseling.
Okay.
And I went to Iowa State and served as a student athlete counselor for the athletic department. That was my job between Pella High and Central. And so I worked mostly with the football program, but I also worked with women's basketball. And when I said I was a student athlete counselor, I thought I was going to do a little sports psychology, do a little helping with some emotional challenges I have. Mostly I did academic coaching and advising when I was there. It was a great experience. Really enjoyed the athletes I worked with. But after doing that for a year and a half, I decided my value system probably aligned more with Division III than it did Division I. And so Coach Skipper was the head football coach at Central, and he worked with the VP of student life at Central, and they hired me to be the director of residence life back on campus, which I oversaw all the hall directors, did all the discipline in the residence halls, and Coach football when I came back. So I was the tight end coach when I first came back. And so basically 2 full-time jobs when I did that.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say is like, one of the things that as we talk with many coaches on the podcast, we always talk about, some of the divisional schools, you wear many hats, and it always looks a little different. Now, this one is very unique because you are holding up a pretty significant role. And I mean, all roles are significant. Don't get it misunderstood, I guess. But, like you said, you have a full-time role over here, and you're also the tight ends coach. Just as a young guy, first time doing the collegiate level, how did you balance all that? How did you manage that?
Well, there's a couple of things. It was different back then because we didn't have spring ball back in those days.
Yeah.
And the amount of contact hours we had in off season was probably less than what we have now.
Yeah.
But, and then Coach Skipper really regulated how much recruiting I did.
Okay.
So the first year I recruited, I only had 10 student athletes that I recruited.
Okay.
And I built upon that every year and got more and more. So that was the one way that I balanced. The other way I balanced is, I was single at that time, and I just loved working at Central, and I loved the different people that I worked with, and so I could compartmentalize my day pretty well. But it also meant most nights I wasn't down until, you go to work at, all coaches are like that, but you go to work at 6:30 in the morning and get done at 9:30 at night, and yeah, it was fun. Didn't have much of a social life, didn't date very much, that kind of stuff.
Right.
It was unique.
And you mentioned kind of those hours, and you just wake up and do it all again the next day. I mean, it's just the simple life.
It is, but the thing that I really appreciate about higher ed is we have cycles to the year, and there's certain parts of the year that, man, we're going to have to really grind it and work hard,
right.
And there's other times where it's just a 40-hour week.
Yeah.
I like the ebb and flow of the year. You almost get yourself, almost like you get psyched up for a game. When you get psyched up for a recruiting visit day.
Yeah.
I mean, I get pumped up and I go, oh, this is my opportunity to shine here. And so I like the ebb and flow of the school year.
Yeah.
And
that's well said. I mean, me and my wife would always talk about that. And it's like right towards the end of recruiting, you got all your kids signing, like, "Ooh, I'm tired of that. I'm ready for the next thing. I'm ready for this next different job that I have, which is now coaching football and having fun."
Now.
Right.
Yeah.
Feels all fresh again, kind of going through that cycle. But from the X and O standpoint, now you're spending a little bit more time in the football office during the football season, and you assuming breaking down film, you have some of those still entry-level type of roles. What were some of the things that you learned, and what were some of the differences from that jump from high school to the collegiate level in regards to game planning, self-scout, just all the stuff that you do?
Yeah. It's way more nuanced, and you got to be more detail-oriented in the college game, and there's more what if.
Yeah.
What if they come out in this coverage? What if they decide to do more even front? You got to have contingency plans. Whereas in high school, you can kind of work your way through that. And the game became more nuanced, and so I had to spend way more time on not only scheme film but technique film. And then the next transition I had was Coach Skipper retired after 36 years. Rich Kakminski took over as the head coach, and he asked me to be the offensive line coach. And so, we in the state of Iowa at that time, Steve Loney was the offensive line coach at Iowa State, and Joe Philbin, who ended up being the head coach of the Miami Dolphins, he's the O-line coach of Iowa. And I literally would go spend 4 days with Steve Loney and then drive over to Iowa City and spend 4 days with Joe Philbin. And great coaches, they did it in different ways. They had different techniques. But I kind of did a hybrid of what they did together to rationalize what we could do at a Division III level, and also the type of athletes. We can kind of recruit the athletes that we want here at Central, but I still have to be adaptable because some of the skill sets that we have, they don't have the same skill set they have at the University of Iowa. So I had to really make sure that the techniques I was asking my athletes to do Division III athletes could do that.
Yeah.
And so it was fun.
Well, I tell you what's awesome to hear is, obviously me sitting in this chair as the director of education, I get nerded out on the professional development opportunities. But as a guy who had some experience coaching O-line already, played O-line, why at that point in time was it important for you to go hop in the car and just go listen to some different people talk offensive line play?
Yeah. I'm going to brag a little bit on Central, but also say this is some of the challenges that we have. We haven't had a losing record here since 1960. And you can take a look at how old I am. We haven't had a losing record during my lifespan. And so we've had success. And success can breed success, and sometimes success can breed complacency.
Absolutely.
And so we got in some, I don't want to say ruts, but we got in some challenges where we were not adapting to the next level of football. And all we knew was Central College.
Yeah.
Because all the assistant coaches were Central College grads. And so and there's virtue to that, right? Yeah. We all know our culture. We all know how challenging academically it is here. We all know that there's a certain culture in Pella, Iowa that you got to work your way through. But on the flip side of it, sometimes getting new ideals and getting a breath of fresh air can be a catalyst to doing some really good things. And so that was my motivation, is specifically the pass game.
Yeah.
We ran the ball 85% of the time, and we had maybe 3 different pass protections. And if they were running certain stunts, we didn't have answers to that. And so we had to get out and get new information. And the thing that I respected about Steve Loney and Joe Philbin is they not only taught me X's and O's, but they taught me how to relate to players in different ways. And it was just a great, valuable learning experience. And so it's also made me more comfortable reaching out to other staff and asking them.
Well, another thing that you hit on in regards to that professional development, I think, man, is probably vital for young coaches. And I tell you a semi-quick story, but I went to my first or second convention as a young coach, and I went and took down pages upon pages of notes. And I went in that room, and I'm embarrassed to say it now, but I went in that room and I tried to do it all. I tried to say it all just like they said it. And I was so confused in myself, what I was doing. I had to peel back and say, okay, let's take one thing and let's refine it to our language and refine it into a way that I can come and say it. Help me be a great coach. But, you kind of hit on these big time coaches are telling you all this stuff, and the easy thing to do is run back and say, hey, all right, guys, we're doing these 25 different things. But you filter through that information and said, how can this affect our Central College kids, who's not this Division I, 6'9", the 320-pound guy. So just talk a little bit about that professional development piece, which I'm sure you had to do a ton of as you've coached tight ends, D-line, D-coordinator, all these different things, how you filter through that information and find what works for you.
I will tell you, one of the things we did that was kind of interesting is, and I can't remember the year, I was going to say 2001. Grinnell College is a small private liberal arts school. It's about 40 miles away from us. My dad actually graduated from Grinnell College. Always had a lot of respect for him. I saw one of their football coaches at the American Football Coaches Association conference. And again, I don't want this to sound elitist, but Central College has a reputation of, always having teams that fight for playoffs and everything like that.
Yeah.
Grinnell College doesn't have that reputation, but they do a lot of good things with the type of resources that they have available.
Yeah.
So I sat down with this guy, he's offensive coordinator at Grinnell, and I said, hey, tell me about your pass pro, how do you do your bicep, that kind of stuff. And he looked at me and he goes, Central College is asking Grinnell College how to do this stuff? And I go, yeah. I mean, great coaching doesn't always lead to wins and losses.
Absolutely.
And I see him too. You guys just great things. So what we end up doing is Grinnell is a unique situation because they have $1 billion endowment. And so they give their coaches leaves of absence. They basically let them take a year off and go to another school to coach. And so we worked out a deal where Grinnell College paid his salary to come down and coach with us for a year.
Wow.
You talk about professional development. And we soon realized, like, within the first 2 weeks, there are great things that they do at Grinnell that we applied to our program. And there's great things that they do at Grinnell that we could never do at Central.
Yeah.
And maybe because we didn't need to do it. They need to do some things that they spent time on that we didn't have to because we were a little bit more established, especially on the screenings and that kind of stuff. That was but to be humble enough to say, all right, there are great coaches out there all over the place. There are great high school coaches out there that we can learn from them and be able to adapt that into our program.
No doubt about it. I'm going to hold on that a little bit. I had a really big lesson at the AFCA convention kind of with that. I went to a major football program, P5 national championship type team, and I went and sat in a session at the position I was coaching. It was a fantastic session. I'm not knocking it by any means, but I'm like, yeah, my 4-7 receiver, he can't just run past that corner. He can't do that. And I love the way it was formatted that year. The next receiver session was in the same room, and it was some school I'd never heard of. And this dude got on that board, man, and it was so much good stuff. And I was just like, he's coaching kids more like what I'm coaching. and just running past the corner doesn't work. And so, he's just talking about ways to win the top of the route and all these cool things. And it was just kind of a learning lesson. It was like, man, anybody that has the opportunity to stand up on a stage can probably provide someone with some value, regardless of their record. And so, no, that's huge. I'm happy you kind of mentioned that. That's a cool program too, by the way, for them to, allow you to borrow their coach for a little bit.
Yeah, they call them administrative sabbaticals and they let them go away.
Yeah.
On the flip side, we went to an NFL camp one year and spent time with their coaches, and they were, as a whole, they were very, very good to work with. But we were having trouble with our running backs playing football, and we literally asked the running back coach, "What do you do to improve? If you got a guy that's from one line," he goes, "We cut him and get a new one." So, we don't have that capability. That's not an option. That's not going to work for us.
That's right. Yeah. And before we kind of leave the topic of just professional development, I did mention that you bounced around in a bunch of roles there at Central College, and even prior to that, how did you stay sharp? How did you pop up in that defensive line room in 06 to 2008 and make sure you were giving those guys the best version of D-line coaching?
Yeah. Well, again, you got to be humble enough to say that you don't know all the answers, but you also you want to use what strengths that you might have. And so this is how this works. I did actually leave Central for 3 years and became a school administrator at a high school in the Des Moines area.
Okay.
And, I did that. One of my former players was in that school district, and he asked me to come, and I knew right away that it was a great job, and I really liked the people I worked with, but they didn't let me coach football, and I knew right away that I had to get back.
Yeah.
So Central hired me back after 3 years, but when I came back, one of my former players was the line coach, and so they asked me, would I be willing to coach defense line? I said, sure. And so I had a lot to learn, but I could use what I knew about coaching offensive line to know, hey, this is what hurt us when I was coaching offensive line. So can we implement some of this stuff? And so I tweaked some of our alignments. I tweaked some of our techniques based on what I learned as offensive line. But then I went out to, again, different colleges in our area, trying to figure out what's the best way to do some of this technique stuff. And I look back at it, I go, man, I can't believe I got away with some of the stuff that we did. We wouldn't teach it that way now, but we were very lucky to have some really talented defensive linemen that could make plays. And they were smaller, faster defensive linemen. When I was offensive line coach, they were pain in the butt to coach against. And so I tried to utilize their strengths in a way that would cause some fits. And so,
absolutely.
The other thing you got to be careful with is it's got to fit into what the defensive coordinator wants either.
Right.
Because there's times where the defensive coordinator came and told me, I really like that technique, but you can't do that when we're running this type of defense. I'll let you do it when we're running, a different front, but when we have a really certain front,
right,
you can't do that. I'm going, oh, okay, because when I was an offensive line coach, I was allowed to do whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted.
Right, just as long as you're getting those guys blocked up, but
Yeah,
it had to fit in schematically for backers and the calls and all that good stuff. I got you. Now, once again, you kind of have a very unique career. Your college coaching was all at Central College, so I don't want to miss the piece and the opportunity that you had to be the offensive coordinator. That year, I think 2002. You served as the offensive coordinator. Kind of what led to that, and then what were some of the successes and struggles you had that year?
Yeah, well, what led to that is, again, we were talking about some of the we had some success. We went 12-1 in 2000. We went 9-2 in 2001, but we felt like when we got to the playoffs, when we got against talent that was equal to us or better than us, we really struggled. And a big part of it was with passing game. And so, Coach Cack asked me if I would go coach the be the offensive coordinator. I never really had a desire to be an offensive coordinator, but I thought, well, this is the way that we can incorporate some of the things I've been learning pass protection wise and marry it with the receivers. So what I learned from that experience is twofold. One is you gotta still marry the team with the type of players that you have. And, we had been such a run-dominated team for such a long time. We didn't have a lot of wide receivers. We probably had 5 fullbacks that were as good as any fullback in the conference. But we had maybe 2 high-level wide receivers. And now I wanted to run more 3 wide outs, and we just didn't have the dudes to do it. And so by the end of the year, we were reverting back to more of the, until Central College could bring in more wide receivers, we weren't ready to do some of it. I tried to go too fast into the modern day football.
Yeah, I got you. Okay. Well,
we still won the conference that year, and we were still competitive, but it wasn't as fluid as what we wanted to do.
Yeah, I understand. I was doing the math. I kind of got all your American Rivers Conference championships there. I was like, they won a conference champs, still. So you still had some success.
This is one of the challenges we have is there's this high expectations, and you can embrace those high expectations, or you can make those expectations be a burden on your shoulders.
Absolutely.
I see it both ways here, essentially.
Yeah.
And I choose to embrace those high expectations. But sometimes when you go 8-2, people are questioning, what's going on?
Right.
What's wrong?
Yeah.
And so there's other conferences that want to win.
Absolutely. It's kind of like the, you watch Alabama go 10-2 and the world is on fire, and then you watch another team go 10-2 and it's like, oh my gosh, they're 10-2, and a lot of that is just built on expectations and built on the past and stuff like that. And with that being said, as a player, Stag Bowl appearance in '84, playoff appearances in '84, '85, '86, Iowa Conference champs, all 4 years you were playing there. And I mean, I will be crazy to talk about American River Conference championships from '95 to 2021. I think you won over 10 of them. Kind of same with the playoff experience. So it's like the expectations are high. I mean, it just is what it is. But with that, being able to kind of experience all that success as a player, all the success over the years as a coach, what are some commonalities in those teams? What is something you see in all those teams that are successful there?
There's a couple of things that I see, and this is kind of paradoxical, but the really good teams that I've been on, they don't talk about winning very much. And part of it is that they've been so good that it's like they don't talk about, are we going to win this week? They talk about, are we going to get better? And so, and I think that's a very valuable lesson when you get in the playoffs. Is like, all right, all this work that we've done to get this point, every week we've gotten a little bit better. That allows us to peak out at that point. The other commonality is having senior leadership has been really important. And when we are really good, we are consistent year in, year out that we have foundational senior leadership. Sometimes when we struggle, we'll have a class that for one reason or other, we didn't have enough people make it through their senior year to provide that senior leadership. But when we've had great senior leadership, we've performed beyond what our athletic capabilities.
Yeah.
Well,
as we kind of bring this to the close, we're going to talk a little bit about the AFCA Division III Assistant Coach of the Year award that you recently won. But I'm gonna ask that in a separate question. But I'm gonna preface it with, I watched the video. I watched it when you guys sent it over to us. But I just watched it again, a refresher before we hopped on the podcast. And this time I probably got to look around more at the student athletes in the crowd and the smiles and just that energy back and forth as you were kind of making light, making some light jokes, and guys were laughing, and I could tell you guys had a great relationship. And in a career that's so turbulent, in a profession that's so turbulent, and it's hard to be at a place for a long time. Obviously it's super interesting that you've been able to have that longevity there. But I think probably one of the more unique parts is that you've worked in admissions, you've worked in student life, you worked in academic affairs, interim dean of student life at one point in time. How have those outside opportunities, shaped the way you've been able to connect? What you said on job number one was the gym that you learned. But how did those opportunities affect the way you interacted with your student athletes and guys that aren't even at your position throughout the years?
Well, I want to preface by saying my big joke is I've been kicked out of every decent department on Central College campus. It's been awesome. And I will also say at Division III level, it's probably afforded me, even though you're working 2 full-time jobs, like I got paid probably better than a traditional assistant football coaches get paid, because I've been paid an administrative contract. Right. Sometimes they allow me to count the hours down the football field. Other times I've been in departments here that they said, "Oh, that's great, you're going down to work with the football team. You got to come back at night and do your job that you missed out." But that it's been a blessing. I went to a recruiting event. I went to a wrestling meet in December, and when I went to the wrestling meet, there were 24 Central College alums that came up and said hi to me. Not all, in fact, none of them were football players. Some of them were students I had that were RAs in the residence halls. Some of them, I also taught classes for 20 years. So some of them were my PIs, personal instructors. And so we all got together with the Central College photo at the end of the wrestling match. And I think that's part of the blessing of being a small college like Central is it's all about relationships and how we're interconnected with each other. And there's this great sense of community learning that takes place here. And I think where that's helped our football program is, like, I have all these connections to other departments around campus. And when we need something as a football program, I can be a conduit to, we need something from the business department. Oh yeah, I work with those people. I know those people really well. If we need something from the psych department, the head of the psych department is one of my good friends. And so we have this connection that allows us to really work together as a community. And so many colleges are built on silos where the athletic department is on one side of the campus and the academics on the other side of the campus and student life on the, and they don't marry those together as well as what we do when we do it right. Yeah. And so that's been a blessing for me there.
Yeah. Well, major hat tip to you, and just all your dedication, not just to that football program, but to that college, and all the hard work, not just on the gridiron and that practice, but in the off seasons, these other buildings across campus, and seeing the academic success of your student athletes, and being that guy that they see out around town, and everybody's running up to you, kind of like the mayor of of Central College and all that kind of stuff, man.
Actually, the mayor of Pella is a former defensive coordinator at Temple. So,
oh yeah,
we have connections. So yeah,
that's awesome. Well, kind of put the icing on the cake here. You were selected as the AFCA Division III Assistant Coach of the Year. And I think some perspective is Division III. I think they have the most programs out of all levels. So you're talking about around 240 programs. You say 10 assistant coaches on every staff. I'm talking about a pool of 2,000 guys. Man, that's big time. And I think what makes it even more big time is this award is selected by your peers, by guys that see the offensive line play, see the work that you put on behind the scenes, all over the country, that sat down and voted for you. What does it mean to you? Kind of, number one, be voted on by your peers, and then number two, just to receive the award and just be able to kind of represent Central College in that light.
Well, that's the big thing. Is I'm representing Central College.
Yeah,
and I think because I've coached on a program that's had sustained success, that they view what I do as virtuous, whether I'm actually good at it or not.
Yeah.
But my athletes get sick of hearing this from me, but I say it all the time. We live in a both and world. Okay. And there's a lot of both and. We want to be good at academics and athletics. We want to work hard and we want to have fun. But the other thing that we talk about all the time is this combination of confidence and humility. And confidence without humility is arrogance. And that's not a world I want to live in. But humility without confidence is insecurity. And insecurity, people can sniff that out right away. And so when I think about winning this award, I'm humble. I hope I'm humble enough to realize I'm really not the best assistant football coach in the Division III. There's better coaches on our staff. I fully understand that. But I have enough confidence in our program and enough pride in our program to know that's what's being recognized. We have a program that I am very proud of. When we do things right here, and Coach McMartin works really hard to make sure that we do the right thing, whatever that happens to be. When we do it, I would put our football program against any school in the nation. So that's how I feel about this award. It's a combination of confidence and pride in our program, along with enough humility to know I got a lot to learn. I mean, I'm 60 years old. I probably will only coach for 20 or 25 more years. But those next 20 years, I still need to learn a whole lot. So looking forward to it.
That's right. And that's what makes you a great coach right there, that you're still willing to learn and adapt and try to continue to change the game and provide what's best for your student athletes. So on behalf of the AFCA, we appreciate you and what you do for this great profession, and appreciate you representing that program well. We love Coach McMartin over here, and you guys are doing a tremendous job. And look forward to watching you guys continuously do so, okay?
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir, Coach. Well, thanks for your time, and we appreciate it. We'll be cheering you guys on, okay?
Thank you.
All right, later.
When communication counts, trust the headsets trusted by the best. From high schools to the biggest college programs, CoachComm keeps coaches connected and teams prepared to win. Learn more at CoachComm.com.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Inside the Headset, presented by CoachComm. If you'd like to learn more about this week's episode, head over to AFCA.com. There, you can access every episode and find corresponding show notes. Remember, you can catch every episode of Inside the Headset presented by CoachComm on wherever you get your podcasts, including Spotify, Apple, and YouTube. While you're there, we love for you to take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. Your feedback helps us improve and grow. Keep up with the latest news by following us on social media. Connect with us at Inside the Headset, and remember to tag us when you share your favorite episodes. For more updates on all things AFCA, be sure to follow the @WeAreAFCA social media accounts. If you're not a part of the AFCA community yet, visit AFCA.com to join thousands of NFL, college, and high school coaches nationwide and across the globe. Elevate your coaching game with an AFCA membership. You'll gain exclusive access to the annual AFCA convention, magazine, digital library, and AFCA Insider email. Stay up to date with the latest stories and news on the AFCA website. More than just a convention, the AFCA offers continuous education, guidance, networking, and more. Celebrate the past and shape the future with the AFCA. It's about fostering exceptional coaches who create outstanding teams and even better individuals. Invest in your skills and make a lasting impact today by engaging with the AFCA. Your journey starts here.